The betrayal of the Forsaken. The planet Solenis was a shimmering jewel in the galaxy, home to the Alvorian race. With their tall, slender figures and glowing blue skin, the Alvorians were a peaceful species known for their advanced science and art. Protected by the Galactic Council, they had thrived for centuries, living in harmony with the universe. But on this day, their harmony was shattered. A dark fleet of unknown origin appeared in their skies. Massive ships blocked out the twin suns, casting shadows over the vibrant cities. At first, the Alvorians thought it was a mistake, perhaps an unannounced diplomatic visit. But the first explosions proved otherwise. Without warning, plasma bombs rained down on the cities, reducing entire districts to rubble. Panic spread like wildfire. In the capital city of Xerin, Kerix, the leader of the Alvorians, stood in the Grand Hall, surrounded by holographic displays of the chaos unfolding across the planet. His calm demeanor cracked as reports came in. Millions dead, the defense grid overwhelmed, and no sign of who these attackers were or why they had come. "We must call the Galactic Council," shouted one of his advisors. "They will send their fleet to protect us." Kerix nodded. The Council had promised to protect its member worlds. Solenis was one of the most loyal members, always contributing resources and technology to the Alliance. Surely they would not abandon them now. A desperate signal was sent, pleading for aid. But hours passed, and no response came. The skies grew darker as the invaders deployed ground troops. Alvorian warriors, trained more for ceremonial duties than actual combat, tried to hold the line. Their efforts were brave but futile. The enemy soldiers were relentless, equipped with weapons far beyond anything the Alvorians had seen. Finally, a message from the Galactic Council arrived. Kerix rushed to the communications chamber, his heart pounding with hope. The hologram of Councillor Veran, a stern-faced representative of the Galactic Alliance, flickered to life. "Councillor Veran, we are under attack," Kerix exclaimed. "Our people are dying. Where is the fleet? Where is the Council's promise?" Veran's expression was cold, almost indifferent. "Kerix, the Council has reviewed the situation. The fleet cannot be spared for Solenis. The risk is too great." Kerix froze. "Risk? What risk? We are part of the Council. You swore to protect us." Veran's tone remained emotionless. "The attackers are unknown. Engaging them without more information could provoke a wider conflict. The Council must prioritize the safety of the majority. I'm sorry, but Solenis is a lost cause." The transmission ended before Kerix could respond. For a moment, he stood in stunned silence. Then he slammed his fist against the console, shattering the holographic display. His people had been abandoned, betrayed by the very alliance they had trusted. As the invaders closed in on the capital, despair gripped the Alvorians. Families huddled together in underground shelters, listening to the distant sounds of explosions. Kerix addressed his people through the emergency broadcast system, his voice trembling but determined. "We have been forsaken," he said, "but we are not without hope. We will fight for our home, for our future. And if this is to be our end, we will face it with courage." Despite his words, Kerix knew the truth. Their weapons were no match for the enemy. Solenis was falling, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. As the first enemy ships landed in the capital, Kerix looked to the stars. "Is there no one out there who will hear our cries?" he whispered. Far away, on the edge of known space, a small human outpost intercepted the Alvorians' distress signal. Commander Sarah Trent stood on the bridge of the Endeavor, a human exploration vessel. She listened to the garbled message, her brow furrowing as she heard Kerix's desperate plea. "Commander," her communications officer said, "the signal is coming from Solenis. It's a member world of the Galactic Council." Sarah crossed her arms, her expression unreadable. "And the Council? Have they responded?" "No, ma'am. They've abandoned the planet." Sarah's jaw tightened. Humanity had always been treated as outsiders by the Galactic Council. Despite their technological advancements and growing presence in the galaxy, humans were seen as a young and reckless species. The Council rarely involved them in major decisions, often leaving them on the sidelines. But this was something Sarah couldn't ignore. "What's our status?" she asked her crew. "Commander, we're not equipped for a full-scale war," her second-in-command warned. "Our ships are small. Our resources are limited. If we go to Solenis, we'll be putting ourselves in the line of fire." Sarah looked around at her crew. She saw the doubt in their eyes, but she also saw something else, a flicker of hope. They were good people, people who had signed up to explore the stars and protect the innocent. "Prepare the fleet," she said firmly. "We may not be the Galactic Council, but we're human. And humans don't turn their backs on those in need." As the human fleet set course for Solenis, the Alvorians braced for what they believed would be their final hours. Little did they know, their cries had reached the only species brave, or reckless, enough to answer. Hope was on the horizon. Humanity's unlikely rescue. The skies above Solenis were heavy with the smoke of burning cities, a grim reminder of the devastation that had swept across the once thriving planet. The Alvorians, huddled in underground bunkers, had all but lost hope. Every corner of their world echoed with despair, their once beautiful civilization reduced to rubble by an enemy that seemed invincible. In the capital city of Zarin, Kirix paced the dimly lit war room, his heart heavy with guilt. As their leader, he had promised to protect his people, but now, with the Galactic Council's betrayal, he felt powerless. A faint tremor shook the ground, followed by the ominous hum of enemy troop carriers descending from the sky. His advisors were frantic, arguing over strategies that even they knew were futile. Kirix silenced them with a raised hand. "There is no strategy," he said quietly. "There is only survival now." Suddenly, a young communications officer burst into the room, her face pale but her eyes wide with disbelief. "Supreme Leader Kirix, we're receiving a transmission." It's from humans." Gasps filled the room. Humans, the species the Galactic Council often dismissed as reckless and insignificant. What could they possibly want in the middle of this nightmare? Kirix frowned but gestured for the officer to patch the transmission through. The holographic display flickered to life, and the image of a human woman appeared. She wore a weathered uniform, her gaze sharp and commanding. "This is Commander Sarah Trent of the Endeavor. We've received your distress signal. Are you still holding out down there?" Her voice was steady, but there was an edge of urgency. Kirix stepped forward, his voice laced with both hope and disbelief. "Commander Trent, your species has no obligation to help us. Why would you risk yourselves for a cause even the Council has abandoned?" Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Because we're not the Council. Humanity doesn't leave people to die, no matter what the odds are. We're on our way. Hold your ground." Before Kirix could respond, the transmission ended. For a moment, the war room was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. "Do you think they'll come?" an advisor asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They will," Kirix said, his voice firm. "And if they do, we will fight alongside them." Above the planet, the Endeavor and its accompanying fleet of human ships emerged from hyperspace. Though smaller and less advanced than the Galactic Council's dreadnoughts, the human ships were built for versatility and cunning. Sarah stood on the bridge, her hands gripping the railing as she surveyed the chaos below. The enemy fleet was enormous, their ships resembling black, predatory beasts. Plasma turrets glowed menacingly, ready to strike. "Commander, enemy ships have locked onto us," shouted her tactical officer. Sarah smirked. "Good. Let them know we're here." The enemy opened fire, streams of plasma streaking toward the human fleet. But the humans were ready. The Endeavor banked sharply, dodging the barrage with practiced ease. Smaller human frigates darted around the larger enemy ships, firing concentrated bursts at their weak points. On the surface, Alvorians watched in awe as the human ships engaged the enemy. For the first time in days, the oppressive blackness of the sky was pierced by explosions of hope. Kyrix, standing outside the bunker with a group of soldiers, felt a surge of adrenaline. "They're actually fighting for us," he muttered, shaking his head in disbelief. But it wasn't just a fight. It was a masterclass in human ingenuity. Using unorthodox tactics, the humans lured enemy ships into tight formations before unleashing EMP blasts that disabled entire squadrons. Smaller vessels executed precision strikes, targeting command centers and engines. On board the enemy flagship, General Nykar watched the battle unfold with growing frustration. His species, the Voric Dominion, had calculated this invasion meticulously. The Alvorians were meant to fall without resistance, but the humans were proving to be an unpredictable variable. "Who are these pests?" Nykar growled, his clawed hand slamming against the console. "Send reinforcements. Crush them." As more Voric ships descended from orbit, Sarah's fleet found itself outnumbered. On the Endeavor, alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. "Commander, we're losing ships fast," her tactical officer warned. Sarah gritted her teeth. "We just need to buy enough time. Send the signal to the Alvorians. Tell them it's their turn to fight." In the underground bunkers, Kyrix received the human signal. He turned to his soldiers, his voice rising with newfound determination. "The humans are risking everything for us. We cannot let their sacrifice be in vain. Gather every able fighter, every weapon we have left. We fight for our home, for our survival." The Alvorians, inspired by the bravery of their unexpected allies, surged into action. Makeshift weapons were distributed, and hastily repaired vehicles roared to life. Under the cover of the human fleet's relentless assault, the Alvorians launched a counteroffensive against the ground forces. Kyrix led the charge, his energy blade gleaming as he struck down a Voric soldier. Around him, his people fought with a ferocity born of desperation and hope. Back in orbit, Sarah's fleet was on the brink of collapse. But then, a cheer erupted from her crew as Alvorian ships, hidden in underground hangars, rose into the sky. Though battered and outdated, the Alvorian fighters joined the battle, their pilots determined to repay the humans' bravery. With renewed strength, the combined forces of humanity and the Alvorians began to turn the tide. One by one, the Voric ships were destroyed or forced to retreat. As the enemy fleet began to withdraw, Sarah leaned against the bridge console, exhaustion etched across her face. "We're not out of this yet," she muttered, "but we gave them something to remember." On the ground, Kyrix looked up at the sky, now dotted with the distant glimmers of surviving human ships. For the first time in days, he allowed himself to smile. "Perhaps," he said softly, "we're not as alone as we thought." The enemy revealed. The victory was temporary, but it gave Solenis something they hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The Voric Dominion had retreated for now, but everyone knew they would return. The question that haunted both humans and Alvorians alike was why. Why had this powerful, shadowy force targeted a peaceful, remote planet like Solenis? And more importantly, how could they be stopped? On board the Endeavor, Commander Sarah Trent sat in the dimly lit war room, her team gathered around her. Holographic displays showed the wreckage of enemy ships littering Solenis orbit. Sarah's face was grim as she studied the data. "They left too quickly," she said, her voice breaking the tense silence. "This wasn't a retreat, it was a recalibration. They're testing us, figuring out how far we'll go." Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Ria Torres, frowned. "Commander, we recovered some debris from their ships. There's something you need to see." Ria tapped a control pad, and a hologram of an alien device appeared. It was sleek, black, and pulsing faintly with an eerie red light. The room went silent as everyone stared at the object. "What is that?" Sarah asked, leaning forward. Ria hesitated. "We're not entirely sure, but our engineers say it's some kind of transmitter. It wasn't destroyed in the explosion. It's designed to survive. Whatever it is, it's still active, and it's broadcasting a signal." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Broadcasting to what?" Before anyone could answer, the war room doors slid open, and Kirix entered, flanked by two Alvorian scientists. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by urgency. "Our analysts have been examining fragments of your recovered debris," Kirix said without preamble. "The technology is ancient, far older than anything the Voric Dominion, or even the Galactic Council, should possess." Sarah stood. Her interest piqued. "Ancient? How ancient are we talking?" Kirix exchanged a glance with his scientists, who hesitated before replying. "Hundreds of thousands of years, perhaps more. This isn't Voric technology. It's borrowed. Stolen." The room fell silent again. Sarah processed the implications. If the Voric Dominion was using ancient alien technology, it could explain why their weapons and tactics were so advanced. But where had they found it? And what else were they hiding? Meanwhile, deep beneath Solana's surface, a human Alvorian recovery team was investigating one of the Voric landing sites. The ground was scorched black, and strange, mechanical remnants were scattered everywhere. One of the Alvorian soldiers, a young technician named Lyris, paused as her scanning device emitted a high-pitched whine. "Commander Trent, you're going to want to see this," she said over the comms. When Sarah and Kirix arrived, Lyris led them to a half-buried structure that had been uncovered by the Voric troops. The structure was massive, made of a material neither the humans nor the Alvorians recognized. Strange symbols were etched across its surface, glowing faintly. Kirix ran his hand over the symbols, his expression unreadable. "This wasn't built by my people," he said quietly. "I've never seen anything like it." Sarah knelt beside him, her fingers brushing against the glowing carvings. "This is what they're after," she said. "This is why they came to Solanus." Lyris nodded. "And the signal from the device we recovered. It's connected to this structure. The Voric Dominion didn't just come here to conquer. They came to awaken something." Back on the Endeavor, the device's signal was being traced, revealing its destination, a cluster of planets deep in uncharted space. Sarah and Kirix reviewed the findings, their unease growing with each passing moment. "If they're activating more of these ancient devices," Sarah said, "we're not just dealing with an invasion. They're building something, a weapon, a fleet, who knows what." Kirix's expression darkened. "The Voric Dominion has always been an enigma. We knew they were powerful, but this is beyond anything we imagined. If they unlock the full potential of this technology, they'll be unstoppable." Sarah finished. To make matters worse, the Galactic Council finally responded, not with aid, but with a warning. A transmission from Counselor Veran appeared on the Endeavor's main screen, his face as cold and dismissive as ever. "Commander Trent," he began, his tone clipped, "your actions on Solanus have caused significant disruption. Humanity has no authority to interfere in Council matters." Sarah's jaw tightened. "With all due respect, Counselor, you abandoned Solanus. Someone had to step in." Veran's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand what you're dealing with. The Voric Dominion is no ordinary enemy. If you continue this course, you'll bring their wrath upon the entire galaxy." "We're already facing their wrath," Sarah shot back. "And unlike you, we're doing something about it." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the room in tense silence. As night fell on Solanus, Kirix and Sarah stood on a hill overlooking the ruins of Zarin. The city's once glowing towers were now dark silhouettes against the starry sky. "We're in this together now," Kirix said. "But are you sure your people are ready for what's coming? The Voric Dominion isn't just fighting for territory, they're fighting for supremacy. And if they win, then the galaxy falls," Sarah finished. She turned to face him, her eyes fierce. "But they haven't won yet, and as long as humanity stands, we'll make damn sure they don't." Unbeknownst to them, deep in the void of space, the Voric Dominion was already preparing their next move. In the shadows of a massive warship, General Nikar stood before an ancient artifact, its glowing symbols reflecting in his cold, predatory eyes. "They think they can defy us," he snarled to his officers. "But they haven't seen what true power looks like. Activate the next device. Let them witness the beginning of their end." The artifact hummed to life, sending a ripple through the fabric of space. Something ancient and terrible was awakening, and humanity was running out of time. The Galactic Council's warning. The Alvorians had begun to rebuild their shattered cities, but the atmosphere on Solanus was far from hopeful. Despite their temporary victory, the looming threat of the Voric Dominion cast a long shadow. Humanity and the Alvorians were now tied together by fate, their fragile alliance their only hope for survival. On board the Endeavor, Commander Sarah Trent sat in the war room, her team gathered around her. The mysterious alien structure unearthed on Solanus and the stolen Voric technology had raised more questions than answers. The signal from the recovered device was still broadcasting into the unknown, a silent promise of more destruction to come. Lieutenant Rhea Torres entered the room, a grim look on her face. "Commander, we've just received a transmission from the Galactic Council." Sarah leaned back in her chair, her eyes narrowing. "Let me guess, they're not offering support." Rhea shook her head. "No, they're threatening sanctions." Sarah sighed, gesturing to bring the transmission up. The hologram of Counselor Varen materialized in the center of the room, his expression as condescending as ever. "Commander Trent," Varen began, his voice dripping with disdain. "Your continued interference in matters beyond humanity's jurisdiction has drawn the attention of the entire Galactic Council. Your actions on Solanus have disrupted the delicate balance of power in this galaxy." "Delicate balance?" Sarah snapped, standing to face the hologram. "You abandoned an innocent world to die. Humanity did what you refused to do. Stand up for what's right." Varen's eyes narrowed. "This is not a matter of morality, Commander. The Voric Dominion is far older and more dangerous than you understand. They do not fight wars, they exterminate civilizations. By opposing them, you've not only endangered Solanus but the entire galaxy." Sarah crossed her arms. "So your solution was to do nothing? To let the Voric Dominion wipe out an entire species while you sit in your council chambers, pretending to be in control?" Varen's tone grew colder. "This is your final warning, Commander Trent. Withdraw from Solanus, cease your operations, and leave this matter to the Council. If you refuse, humanity will face the consequences." The transmission cut out abruptly, leaving the room in heavy silence. Carrix, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stepped forward. "You know they won't help us. The Council is too afraid to act." Sarah clenched her fists, her frustration evident. Afraid or complicit, either way, they've made their choice. And so have we. Rhea hesitated before speaking. "Commander, if we defy the Council, we'll be painting a target on humanity's back. Are we ready for that?" Sarah looked around the room, meeting the eyes of her crew. "We didn't come out here to play politics. We came to explore, to protect, and to stand up for those who can't defend themselves. If the Council wants to stop us, they'll have to come through us first." Her words were met with nods of agreement. Humanity had always been underestimated, but they had never backed down from a fight. Meanwhile, on the surface of Solanus, Alvorian scientists continued to study the ancient structure uncovered by the Voric Dominion. The glowing symbols etched into its surface seemed to pulse with a rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. Lyris, the young Alvorian technician who had first discovered the structure, was now leading the research team. "There's something alive about it," she said, her voice tinged with awe. "It's not just a machine, it's something more." Carrix arrived to inspect their progress, accompanied by Sarah. As they examined the structure, Lyris pointed to a cluster of symbols that had begun glowing brighter than the others. "We believe these are coordinates," she explained. "The device the humans recovered is broadcasting a signal to a specific location in uncharted space. Whatever the Voric Dominion is after, it's there." Sarah's brow furrowed. "Then that's where we need to go." Carrix hesitated. "Commander Trent, we barely survived their last attack. If we follow this trail, We could be walking into a trap. Sarah nodded. We could be. But if we don't, they'll keep coming. And next time, we might not be able to stop them. We need to know what we're up against. As preparations for the mission began, tension between the humans and Alvorians simmered beneath the surface. Some Alvorians questioned humanity's motives, wondering if they were simply using Solanus as a staging ground for their own agenda. Others feared the Voric Dominion would return in greater force, making Solanus a battlefield once more. Kyrix addressed these concerns in a public speech, his voice calm but firm. Humanity has risked everything to protect us when no one else would. They are not our enemies. They are our allies. If we stand together, we can survive. If we falter now, we are already defeated. His words resonated with many, but not all. The seeds of doubt had been sown, and the alliance between humanity and the Alvorians was fragile at best. In the void of space, the Voric Dominion prepared their next move. General Nikar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at the glowing artifact they had recovered from another world. The symbols on its surface matched those of the structure on Solanus, pulsating in sync with the signal being broadcast. Commander, one of his officers reported, the signal from Solanus has reached its destination. The artifact is responding. Neckar's lips curled into a predatory smile. Good. Let the humans and their pet Alvorians chase their shadows. By the time they realize what's happening, it will be too late. As the artifact began to hum with energy, a massive portal opened in the void, revealing a swirling otherworldly light. Something ancient stirred beyond the threshold, something that had not been seen in the galaxy for millennia. Soon, Nikar whispered, his eyes gleaming with anticipation. Soon, they will all kneel. Back on the Endeavor, Sarah stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. She knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but she also knew there was no turning back. Humanity had made its choice, and now they would face the consequences, no matter the cost. Forging an alliance. The galaxy was vast and cruel, but it was also unpredictable. Humanity and the Alvorians were learning that survival wasn't about strength alone. It was about unity. Yet, in the face of the Voric Dominion's growing threat, unity seemed like a fragile dream. The coordinates uncovered from the ancient device led deep into uncharted space, to a desolate system known only in myths and whispered warnings. Commander Sarah Trent and Supreme Leader Kyrix knew they couldn't face the Dominion alone. They needed allies, outcasts, rebels, and forgotten species that had suffered under the Galactic Council's indifference and the Dominion's conquests. The search for allies. The Endeavor and its fleet ventured into the farthest reaches of the galaxy, their journey filled with peril. They visited dying worlds, derelict space stations, and hidden colonies, places untouched by the Council, but scoured by the Voric Dominion. One such stop was Xelari, a shattered planet whose skies were permanently darkened by the wreckage of ancient battles. Its inhabitants, the insectoid Xelari, were once a proud warrior race, but years of relentless Dominion attacks had reduced them to scavengers. Sarah and Kyrix met with their leader, a grizzled Xelari named Tarkva, inside a crumbling fortress. "You think we'll fight alongside you?" Tarkva hissed, his mandibles clicking in disdain. "The Dominion broke us. The Council abandoned us. Why should we trust anyone?" Sarah stepped forward, her voice firm but calm. "Because we've been where you are. Humanity was cast aside by the Council too, and the Dominion will keep coming, whether you fight or not. But if we stand together, we have a chance." Tarkva studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. A chance is better than waiting to die. With the Xelari joining their cause, the alliance grew. Word spread of humanity's defiance and the Alvorians' resilience. More outcast species rallied to their banner. The Turvans, a nomadic race of engineers, the Drekken, fierce aquatic warriors, and even rogue factions of humans who had left Earth long ago to carve out their own destiny. Divisions within the alliance, but unity was not without its challenges. The cultural differences between species led to clashes. The Tervans, who valued logic above all, found the Drekken's aggressive nature intolerable. The Vekari, distrustful by nature, accused humanity of using them as pawns. Kirix and Sarah worked tirelessly to mediate these conflicts. In one tense meeting, a Vekari commander confronted Sarah directly. "You act like we're equals, but we all know humanity holds the reins. How do we know you won't abandon us when it's convenient?" Sarah's voice was steady as she replied, "Because we've seen what abandonment does. The Council left Solanus to burn, and we refuse to let that happen. We're not the Council. If we fall together." Her words struck a chord, but the alliance remained fragile, held together by shared desperation more than trust. The enemy strikes back. As the alliance prepared for the journey to the coordinates, the Voric Dominion launched a counterattack. A massive fleet appeared on the edge of the Tervan homeworld, cutting off critical supply lines. The message was clear. The Dominion knew of their alliance, and they intended to crush it before it could gain strength. Sarah led a daring rescue mission with the Endeavor, using hit-and-run tactics to outmaneuver the Dominion fleet. Meanwhile, Kirix coordinated efforts to evacuate Tervan engineers and supplies, working alongside Tarkva and his Vekari warriors. The battle was chaotic, with Dominion ships far outnumbering the Alliance forces. At one point, a Dominion destroyer targeted an escaping civilian transport. Without hesitation, Sarah ordered her ship to intercept the blast, taking heavy damage in the process. On the surface, Kirix personally led a squad to hold the evacuation point against advancing Dominion troops. When the fighting was over and the civilians were safe, he received a transmission from Sarah. "Status?" she asked, her voice strained but determined. "We held," Kirix replied. "But they're testing us, Sarah. They're probing for weaknesses." "Then we'll give them none," Sarah said, though both knew it was easier said than done. Discovering the truth. After the battle, the Alliance regrouped and set course for the mysterious coordinates. The closer they got, the more disturbing the signs became. They passed derelict ships, their hulls marked with the same ancient symbols as the artifact on Solanus. Strange energy readings spiked across their sensors, and several crew members reported vivid nightmares. When they finally arrived at the coordinates, they found themselves in a system dominated by a massive, ancient structure, a station so large it dwarfed even the largest Dominion ships. Its surface was covered in glowing runes, and it emitted a low hum that resonated through the ships. Kirix stared at it, his voice barely a whisper. "What is that?" Lyris, who had joined the expedition, scanned the structure. "It's not just a station. It's a gateway. The signal from the device. It's activating something inside." Before they could investigate further, alarms blared. Dominion ships had followed them, emerging from hyperspace in overwhelming numbers. At their center was the flagship of General Nykar, who transmitted a message directly to the Endeavor. "You've come far, little humans," Nykar sneered. "But this is where your story ends. The Dominion has no place for defiance." Sarah gritted her teeth. "We're not afraid of you, Nykar." "You should be," he replied, his voice dripping with malice. "You've opened a door you can't close, and what lies beyond will consume you." As the Dominion fleet prepared to attack, the ancient structure began to pulse with energy, its runes glowing brighter. The gateway was awakening, and whatever was on the other side was stirring. The Alliance had fought hard to reach this point, but as the gateway activated and the Dominion closed in, one thing became clear: the true battle was only beginning. The battle for Solanus. The ancient gateway roared to life, sending waves of energy rippling through space. Its runes glowed an intense white, brighter than any star. The Alliance fleet hovered nearby, bracing for what would come through. On the bridge of the Endeavor, Commander Sarah Trent watched with narrowed eyes, every muscle tense. "This is it," she murmured, gripping the console. "This is what they've been waiting for." Beside her, Kirix stood in silent awe. The Alvorian leader had faced many challenges in his life, but nothing compared to the foreboding power emanating from the gateway. "What's on the other side of that?" Carix asked, his voice low. Sarah didn't answer, but the truth was clear in her mind. Whatever it wasn't friendly. The Dominion's trap. Before the Alliance could act, the Voric Dominion fleet struck. Ships descended on the Alliance forces like a swarm of black locusts, firing plasma bolts and missiles. Dominion fighters, sleek and deadly, wove through the chaos, targeting smaller vessels. General Nikar's flagship hovered at the edge of the battlefield, a menacing shadow watching over the carnage. From his command chair, Nikar sneered as the battle unfolded. "Focus on the humans," he barked to his officers. "They're the spine of this alliance. Break them, and the rest will scatter." The Dominion strategy was brutal but effective. Human ships bore the brunt of the assault, their shields faltering under relentless fire. Alvorian fighters joined the fray, using their agility to outmaneuver the larger Dominion ships, while the Vekari launched daring boarding assaults. A desperate plan. On board the Endeavor, alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. The ship shuddered violently, its hull taking hit after hit. "Commander, we can't hold this position much longer," Rhea shouted, her hands flying over the controls. Sarah gritted her teeth, her mind racing. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and running out of options. But retreat wasn't an option, not now. "Kyrix," Sarah said, turning to the Alvorian leader. "That gateway is the key to everything. If we can shut it down, we might have a chance." Kyrix nodded. "Agreed. But how?" Sarah's gaze shifted to the holographic display of the gateway. The energy readings were spiking, and something massive was beginning to emerge. A colossal, shadowy shape that defied comprehension. "We're not shutting it down from out here," Sarah said grimly. "We'll need a strike team. Someone has to get inside that thing and deactivate it from within." The room fell silent. Everyone understood the stakes. It was a suicide mission. "I'll lead the team," Sarah said firmly. "Rhea, you'll command the fleet in my absence. Kyrix, I need you with me." Kyrix hesitated only for a moment before nodding. "Let's end this." The infiltration. As the battle raged around them, a small strike team launched from the Endeavor in a stealth shuttle. The team consisted of Sarah, Kyrix, Lyris, and a handful of elite fighters from both the human and Alvorian forces. The shuttle weaved through the chaos, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. The closer they got to the gateway, the more oppressive the energy became. The structure loomed before them, its surface pulsing with alien symbols. The shadowy shape emerging from the gateway was now visible, a massive tentacled beam of pure energy, its form shifting and writhing. "What is that?" Lyris whispered, her voice trembling. "Something that should have stayed buried," Sarah replied, her grip tightening on her weapon. The shuttle docked at an exposed entry point on the gateway's surface. The team disembarked, weapons drawn, and entered the ancient structure. Inside, the air was thick with energy, and the walls seemed to hum with an otherworldly rhythm. "This place is alive," Kyrix murmured, his eyes scanning the glowing runes. "It's a weapon," Sarah corrected, "and we're shutting it down." The heart of the gateway. Navigating the gateway was like moving through a maze, each corridor pulsing with energy. Dominion forces had already infiltrated the structure, and the team encountered heavy resistance. The fights were brutal, with plasma bolts and energy blades lighting up the dark halls. Despite the odds, the strike team pushed forward, driven by sheer determination. Finally, they reached the heart of the gateway, a massive chamber with a central core, glowing with blinding energy. The core was the source of the gateway's power, but it was heavily guarded. As they entered the chamber, alarms blared, and Dominion soldiers poured in from all sides. General Nikar's voice echoed through the comm systems. "You think you can stop what's already begun?" He sneered. "You're too late, humans. The gateway is open. The Ascendant will awaken, and this galaxy will burn." Sarah ignored his taunts, focusing on the core. Lyris, how do we shut it down? The Alvorian technician examined the core, her hands trembling. There's a failsafe, but it's buried under layers of encryption. I'll need time. We don't have time. Carrick shouted, firing at advancing Dominion soldiers. Then buy her some. Sarah ordered, taking position alongside Carrick's. A sacrifice for survival. As Lyris worked to disable the core, the team fought valiantly to hold their ground. One by one, their numbers dwindled, but they refused to back down. When Lyris finally cracked the failsafe, she turned to Sarah, her face pale. I can overload the core, Lyris said, but it'll trigger a chain reaction. This whole place will go up. Sarah nodded. Do it. Lyris hesitated. We won't have enough time to escape. Sarah placed a hand on her shoulder. Then we make sure it's worth it. With a deep breath, Lyris activated the failsafe. The core began to destabilize, its glow intensifying as the entire structure trembled. Alarms blared louder, and the walls began to crack. Fall back, Sarah shouted. The team fought their way back to the shuttle, but Dominion forces were relentless. Carrick took a hit to his leg, but refused to slow down, leaning on Sarah for support. As they reached the shuttle, Sarah turned back, her eyes narrowing. Carrick's, get them out of here. What about you? He asked, his voice filled with concern. I'll buy you the time you need, she said, stepping away from the shuttle. Sarah, no, Carrick shouted, but the shuttle's hatch closed, and the engines roared to life. Sarah turned to face the advancing Dominion soldiers, her weapon raised. You wanted humanity's best, Mykar. You're looking at her. The Endeavor watched from a distance as the gateway erupted in a blinding explosion, its energy cascading across the system. A shadowy being emerging from the portal vanished, its form consumed by the blast. On the bridge, Rhea watched the destruction with tears in her eyes. She did it, she whispered. She actually did it. The Dominion fleet, disoriented by the explosion, began to retreat. The Alliance had won. For now. But the cost was devastating. Sarah Trent's sacrifice would become a legend, a symbol of humanity's resilience and courage. The Alliance, though battered, stood stronger than ever, united by her memory. But in the shadows of the galaxy, the Voric Dominion licked its wounds, vowing revenge. The war was far from over. Humanity's legacy. The gateway's destruction sent shockwaves across the galaxy, both literal and symbolic. The Voric Dominion had been dealt a humiliating blow, their plans to harness ancient power thwarted. But the cost of victory weighed heavily on the Alliance. Solenis was left scared, its cities in ruins, and the fleet was fractured and weary. Yet, amidst the devastation, a new hope flickered. The aftermath of sacrifice. The Alliance's leaders gathered in the capital of Zarin, now a shattered city, but still standing, a testament to their resilience. Supreme Leader Carrick addressed the gathered Alvorians, humans, and their newfound allies. His voice carried a tone of reverence. Commander Sarah Trent gave her life for more than just Solenis. She gave her life to show us that unity, courage, and defiance can stand against even the darkest forces. Humanity has shown us the way forward, not as conquerors, but as protectors. The crowd erupted into cheers, but the weight of Sarah's absence lingered heavily. Rhea Torres, now the acting commander of the Endeavor, stood at Carrick's side. She had inherited a fleet that was battered but determined to carry Sarah's vision forward. Later that night, Carrick and Rhea met privately in the ruins of the old Alvorian Council chamber. The holographic map of the galaxy flickered before them, showing the regions still under Dominion control. They'll be back, Carrick said grimly. The Dominion doesn't forgive, and they certainly don't forget. Rhea nodded. We've delayed them, not defeated them. But now, they know we're not afraid to fight. A galaxy in turmoil. News of the gateway's destruction spread quickly. Across the galaxy, species long oppressed or ignored by the Galactic Council began to take notice. The Alliance's defiance had lit a spark in the hearts of the forgotten. On the planet Draknar Prime, a species known as the Zerthik, infamous for their rebellion against the Council centuries ago, sent an envoy to join the Alliance. On the desolate mining colonies of Yarla, laborers began arming themselves, inspired by the humans' bravery. Even rogue factions within the Council itself began questioning their allegiance, murmurs of dissent spreading like wildfire. But the Council was far from pleased. In their grand chamber, Councillor Veran and his peers debated the ramifications of humanity's actions. "They've disrupted the balance of power," one councillor argued. "The Dominion will not let this stand, and now they see humanity as a threat." Veran's expression was cold. Humanity has always been a threat, reckless, defiant, and unmanageable. But now they've become something more, a symbol, and symbols are dangerous. "What do we do?" another asked. "We wait," Veran said. "The Voric Dominion will handle humanity, and if they don't, we'll ensure humanity's rise is short-lived." The ascendant threat. While the Alliance celebrated their victory, far from Solanus, the Voric Dominion licked its wounds. General Nikar stood aboard a hidden command station, his fury barely contained. The remains of the gateway had been salvaged, its ancient secrets still partially intact. One of his officers approached, bowing slightly. "General, the Ascendant. It stirred before the humans destroyed the gateway. It isn't gone. It's dormant, but it's aware." Nikar's expression darkened. "Then we've only delayed the inevitable. The humans have bought themselves time, but they've also awakened something far beyond their understanding. Prepare the fleets. The Ascendant will rise again, and when it does, we'll use it to crush this so-called alliance." Rebuilding and strategizing. Back on Solanus, the Alliance leaders convened to plan their next steps. The room was filled with voices: Vicari, Drekken, humans, Alvorians, and others, all working together for the first time in galactic history. "We've shown the galaxy that the Voric Dominion can be stopped," Kerix began, "but they won't make the same mistakes twice. We need to strengthen our defenses and expand our reach." Rhea nodded. "We need more allies. The Council won't help, but there are others like us, species left behind, worlds the Dominion has ravaged. If we can unite them, we'll have a chance." Tarkva, the Vicari leader, clicked his mandibles. "A slim chance, but it's better than waiting for the Dominion to wipe us out." As the meeting ended, Rhea lingered, staring at the holographic map. The weight of her new responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. She thought of Sarah, of her unwavering determination. What would you do now? She wondered. Humanity's message. In the days following the battle, a message was broadcast from Solanus to the entire galaxy. Rhea stood before the camera, her voice steady and resolute. "This is Acting Commander Rhea Torres of the Endeavor. Humanity was once seen as insignificant, reckless, and weak, but we've proven that courage and unity can overcome even the greatest of threats. To those who live in fear of the Voric Dominion, know this: you are not alone. Join us, and we will stand together. Together, we can build a future where no one is abandoned, where no one is left behind." The message resonated far and wide. Across the galaxy, species began to rally behind humanity's banner, drawn by their defiance and willingness to fight for those the Council had forsaken. A new dawn. On Solanus, the first Alliance fleet was christened, its ships bearing the symbols of all its member species. The flagship, a massive vessel constructed by human and Alvorian engineers, was named Trent's Legacy in honor of Sarah. Kerix and Rhea stood side by side as the fleet prepared for its maiden voyage. "This is only the beginning," Kerix said. Rhea nodded. "The galaxy's changing, and for the first time, we're the ones shaping it." As the fleet launched into hyperspace, the camera panned to the ruins of the gateway, now a solemn monument to the battle fought there. Unseen by all, faint runes on the remaining structure flickered once more, their ancient light hinting at a power that was far from extinguished. The war was far from over, But humanity's legacy was secure. For the first time in galactic history, the forgotten and the forsaken had hope, and it was carried by the banner of Earth.